am Dr. Joseph Barber. I lead the team here at Career Services that works with graduate students and postdocs across 7 of Penn schools. And so we are very familiar, my team and I, in terms of the challenges and the great opportunities that exist in terms of having a PhD and in terms of creating narratives for your own PhD that are going to make sense for the broadest range of careers that are of interest to you. At Career Services, our goal is to sort of be very student focused. So if your goals are to look for academic roles, faculty roles, we can support you with that. If your goals are to look at the great number of opportunities beyond that, we can be equally supportive of that as well. Obviously, the reality of the job market is that there are limited numbers of opportunities out there, and so it's always a good idea to know where your skills and experiences can be valued, and where there may be opportunities and work environments that really match your skills to the best degree. So, from our perspective, we really encourage career exploration for everyone, and I'll sort of explain why that might be the case and might be helpful for you in this case as well. So what to get out of today's workshop, plural, singular, because we're going to do one for today. Basically a way to start the process. Many of you may have been exploring options or networking or applying for things already, and that's great. But for some of you, this may be the first sort of pause in your process where you think about, well, how can I do this in a strategic way? So we're going to make sure that we are giving you some steps that you can take and steps that you can follow. I am going to sort of throw lots of resources at you, not because I think that's necessarily helpful, but because each of them does something slightly differently. And from wherever you are in the process, you might want to engage with some of them more than the others. So going and giving you an overview of those, I think is going to be very helpful. We do, as an office, Career Services pay for some of these resources. So we really love it when people use those opportunities as part of their career and professional development. And then ultimately, because each of you come with your own unique backgrounds and your own unique goals moving forward from a career perspective, I am going to highly recommend, if you haven't done so already, connecting with an advisor at Career Services for a one-on-one session at some point in time, so that you can talk through where you are and where you want to go and what are the resources and steps that are going to be very specific to you. Obviously, throughout the session, I'm going to be keeping it very broad and very general so that it sort of meets all your needs, as it were. But those one-on-one sessions can be very helpful. And I appreciate the fact that if you've been looking for an appointment, they are few and far between. We are high capacity right now in terms of people making appointments, but we do have daily drop-ins that you can take advantage of. And we're always adding more appointments throughout the week. So please do keep an eye out for those. We're more than happy to chat with you. I'm going to start off right away with sort of understanding what we mean by career exploration, because I want to make a couple of things sort of really apparent. One is that you can explore careers even within the same field, right? So if you are interested in the faculty roles, there are many dimensions of being a faculty member at different types of institutions and different types of departments that are worth exploring, right? So it doesn't really matter. We're not only talking about other things, because I don't like the word other. They're all just options out there for you. They're all equally valuable, equally appreciative of the skills that you're bringing. But you can certainly explore the dimensions of those other paths that are out there, right? So, whether those are think tanks or policy or consulting or tech firms and tech roles, there are intersections of skills and experiences that are worth exploring to see what those roles mean, what the companies represent, what's their culture, how does that differ from your expectations. So much that can be looking at. But fundamentally, it's about identifying what your skills, interests, and values are, and seeing where those skills, interests, and values are appreciated the most in the different types of places that are out there that you might be able to find positions with it. It's also going to give you a strategy moving forward for the next few years about what you should be doing, what you should be thinking about. If you're early in your program, certainly there are things that you can be building at Penn that are skills related that are going to position you for success. If you can appreciate the strategy behind that, if you can understand what skills are valued in different industries and different roles, then you can build that as part of your PhD experience. Obviously, for faculty roles, publications and funding, these are things that you have to invest in, and that's what you have been doing. But for other roles, those may be less important. So knowing what the skills and experiences that you need to build are is part of that career exploration. Now, it doesn't have to be complicated, right? This is a career exploration roadmap. You don't have to look into the details. This is on based on, I think it's an NIH-based grant where they came up with this framework for career exploration. It looks kind of terrifying to a certain extent, but the steps in a career exploration process are fairly standard, right? So the first step is really to understand yourself. What is it that you want? What is it you do well? What are your strengths? and then to think about and reflect on how those match different opportunities that are out there. So for example, if you are someone and you know yourself as someone who really likes team-based collaborative projects, then it's possible that a faculty path isn't going to be the best fit for you, because although there are collaborations at the faculty level, they're not really teams in the same way that you get teams in, let's say, a business environment, right? So again, these are dimensions that you can explore, but that self-assessment is really helpful at sort of setting yourself up for success in terms of, you know, where you might look moving forward. Then there's going to be an element of research and investigation. So let's take away this complicated map here and make it more simple, right? These are the steps that we have on the Career Services website related to sort of what PhDs and postdocs can be thinking about as part of their process. So the reflect and explore options, right? Reflect is internal, explore is sort of more external. Part of that exploration is going to involve networking. It's going to involve looking at online materials. It's basically doing a literature review of the materials that are out there related to careers that you can do. You're all researchers, so literature reviews are easy things for you to do. So I'll talk about some of the resources that you can use to do that. Then there's this idea of, once you've figured out what those options might be for you, those career options, what is it that you can do and demonstrate about your skills that is going to make you a good match for that? So once you understand the nature of the role and what is valued in the role, how can you demonstrate that you have those skills and experiences and knowledge areas? What can you be doing on campus to sort of give you those things? So we'll touch on that briefly. It's not going to be the main focus, but it's a very important aspect of building your strategy moving forward. And then the take actions and making decisions is really about applying, right? So that's when you are creating potentially a resume instead of a CV. That's when you are creating answers to interview questions that require you to think beyond your research about how you do the research, not just what the research is, right? This is where you have to articulate different versions of yourselves for different audiences who are out there looking to find people with the right skills so that you can position yourself for success. Again, that's what Career Services does a lot of in terms of providing feedback on application materials, doing mock interviews, and so forth. At the heart of it, though, these are some of the career exploration questions that I think that can be helpful for anyone to ask, right? And the one I highlighted is the most challenging one. It's the one that your relatives ask you, what do you want to do? And they've asked you all your life, what do you want to do when you grow up? But that is a moving target. What you want to do is dependent on what you know that's out there. And you may not know what's out there, but you may find that there are roles that are a better fit for your skill sets than other roles that you know about. So what you want to do is something that you want to continually ask yourself and make sure that you are calibrating your strategy around those areas. But how can I use my knowledge and skills is also a critical one, right? So first of all, you have to identify what are your knowledge areas and what are your skills, what do you do well? And then you have to sort of identify where are these things used, where are they valued? And that exploration can come from, again, from online sort of research, but also the networking side that we'll get into. This is another important dimension as well, right? So that there are two types of exploration that you can do. There are things where you can say, well, what are the options right now that I could do with the skills that I have? I have this knowledge area, I have these research skills, who values those, right? And in many cases, academic roles will value those, think tanks and policy work will value those skills without too much change in terms of how you talk about those. But some roles are going to need more from you. The other dimension of this is, what are the skills that you actually need to do the role that you want? Right, so if you find out that there are roles out there that are really exciting to you, I really want to be positioned. And we'll take the standard consulting role as an example. If I want to be a consultant, what skills do I actually need to do that? And how do I build those skills, right? So both of those elements are sort of exploration. One is taking what you have right now and seeing what that's valid. One is seeing what you want to do and then figuring out a way to make sure that your narratives align with what that looks like. The more you identify in terms of options, especially options that you're excited in, the more you have to sort of set aside enough time to build those experiences and skill and knowledge areas to make sure that you're a good match for those. So that's a challenge because your research work takes up a lot of time and there isn't always time set aside for professional development given by your advisor or your department, right? You're busy doing your own things, which is totally understandable. But a small percentage of your active time, not your sleeping time or your connecting socially with your family and friends time, a small percentage of your active time needs to be about building new skills that are transferable. And then obviously you have to make decisions moving forward. Some of those decisions are not sometimes yours to make, right? If there are no positions that you are excited by on the faculty path, for example, you can't make more positions, right? But you can then make a decision about what to do if there are no positions that you're interested in. When you get an offer, you still make a decision about whether that's the right offer for you. And decision making can feel hard, but the more information you have, the more knowledge you have, the more research that you've done into these options, the easier it is to make those types of decisions. Now, I know based on some of the data from the political science department that many PhDs go on to faculty roles or postdoc roles. I've looked at the career plan survey. I'll talk about that in a second. And that still may be the main priority that you have. And I think it's always important to have a primary role that you want to invest your time in and your energy in. But I don't think you should have a single role. You should have a priority role, and then you should have options that you are cultivating through your experience and exploration. And one of the reasons, that it's important to have options is because, and I've touched on some of these already, sometimes things just don't work out the way that you would hope that they work out. The position that you're offered isn't in the geographical place that you want to be. You have a great position, but now your family or your partner can't be with you because there are no other options for them. You may turn out that that this is no longer a priority for you. It was when you started your PhD, but it's not, whatever option that might be. So understanding what your options are, I think, is really helpful. And it's really helpful also because the idea of exploring options is easier to do on campus as a student than it is, once you're out in the real world doing other things. And so leveraging the resources, our office and the other resources available through Penn are going to be really helpful as part of this process. The other aspect that I often see in terms of when I meet with PhD students and postdocs is that it feels sometimes that there hasn't been enough time for everyone to sort of pause for a moment and say, what is it that I'm actually excited by? What is it that I want to do? What is it that I'm good at doing? What is it that resonates in terms of making me a unique candidate in the world out there? I think some people have been swept along from undergraduate to PhD to wherever they are right now, right? So there's a lot of moving happening. Sometimes it's important to step aside and think about it. These are questions that we obviously won't cover today in terms of going through and giving answers to that, but I think it's really helpful and healthy to every now and again check in with these types of questions and say, well, let me take stock about what I can do well. The reason I think it's healthy is because the academic environment is often a place where there's very little positive reinforcement. There's a lot of critical feedback from your advisor, critical feedback from journal publishers, from book publishers, from funding agencies, who are happy to tell you no, that you didn't get it or know what it is. But very, very rarely do people say, you're really great at doing this. It just tends to be not language that's used in academia, which is, it's a negative there. So if, in the absence of other people telling you that you do a good job at doing these things, you have to be self-reinforcing, right? You have to touch on some of these things. And the reason that these are going to be beneficial is because they really help then identify a foundation for your exploration, right? Once you've figured out the things that you do well and things that you enjoy doing, it's much easier then to have a sort of a focus about where you want to explore those options. So even if you take nothing away from this presentation, but you do walk through these questions with yourself or with a peer from your department, I think you'll find it's a very healthy and upbeat experience. That self-assessment of skills is very similar to what you'll find on this platform here. Now, hopefully some of you have come across this already. I'm just going to go into a few details about what this is. But imagine PhD is a platform, a career exploration and discovery platform for PhDs in the humanities and social sciences that was developed by PhD career advisors who work with PhD students in the humanities and social sciences. So it's a custom-made tool that is meant to be very supportive, or it is very supportive for your exploration, for your application, for your community building as a whole. This is not Penn specific. This is a free tool that you can use. You can set up a free profile. And one of the first things that happens as part of the PhD, Imagine PhD experience, is it's going to prompt you to go through these assessments of your skills, interests, and values, right? Same thing as those questions, those basic questions I just shared just now we're doing, but as a way to sort of give you a foundation for your search and moving forward. So once you sign into the account, sign in and set up your account, these assessments here are going to pop up. Obviously, I've run through this several times as part of my exploration, but let me sort of talk through what these assessments do. So in terms of interests, right, you can assess your interests of things that you want to do, things that you want to do more of. This is just an example of some of the questions that are popping up as part of that interest survey, right? Some of these are very much academic-oriented questions that are broken down into categories, but you can get a snapshot of who you are right now. Right? It shouldn't be surprising because you know what you'd like, but it's nice sometimes to see that verbalized there. In terms of skills, you can also see and sort of begin to think about your skill sets, things that you're good at, things that you haven't yet done, things that you could be better at, right? So there's a whole bunch of drag and drop options here to put your skills into these different categories. And hopefully, some of these are things that you all put into that I can do this very well. You have to sort of acknowledge that you can do things very well. Sometimes people have a hard time doing that, but I know, from experience that everyone here has a lot of doing very well skills. This is research and analysis skills. This is a subsection. If you look along the top of this slide, you'll see all of the different other categories of skills that you have. And what you can do then is you can build this pattern of what are the skills that I have across these different dimensions and different areas, right? So it's a very reinforcing environment that sort of allows you to sort of see where things stand. It also allows you to see where some of the gaps are, right? You might say, well, I haven't done this yet, or I'd like to do more of this. Then that gives you a strategy to say, well, where can I do more of this? How can I build these skills? How can I make that part of my research? How can I do something totally distinct from my research to be able to gain some of these skills, right? So this is a very nice roadmap to sort of figuring out where your skills lie. The reason that the Imagine PhD platform has you do these assessments is that they have these job families, different career paths commonly taken by people with humanities and social sciences PhDs, where the builders of this platform have gone out to people in these different fields and industries and asked them similar questions about the skills and the interests that resonate with their different career paths. And so what you can do then is you can take your skills and interests and match those with other job families out there. Again, in broad terms, because there are discrete roles in all of these industries that are unique and have very specific criteria. But this will give you an idea, right? So for example, these are communications and marketing roles on the left and consulting roles on the right. We're looking at interest comparisons here. What is the level of overlap between what I say my interests are and what experts who work in these fields say their interests are? And so where there's a nice star, the 5-pointy star, you can see that I have good overlap. My interests and the roles' interests sort of align. Where there's the multi-pointed star, which I have no idea what they usually call stars with different points. So, in consulting, resolving conflict, something I don't want to do. I'm not interested in resolving conflict, but in consulting, that may be a big part of the role. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't be a consultant. It doesn't mean that this is a path that I jump off just because of this one mismatch. But it does give me a sense of whether my understanding of the field and what I think the field is and what I'm interested in align. Now, the interesting thing about these job families is that faculty is one of these, right? So I'm jumping back to this slide. Faculty, both research and teaching-focused faculty, are one of the job families. You can do the same type of assessment and matching between your skills and interests with faculty as well. So Imagine PhD does not make a distinction between faculty as a career option. It's just one of many career options that are out there. Here are some skills comparisons, right? So writing, publishing, and editing job family, and communications, public relations, and marketing job family. Again, there are some great matches. I like writing and editing, so there's a good match there. Design skills, can I use Photoshop? Well, not really. Doesn't mean that I can't learn it, right? And so if I was interested in a role in public relations or communications or marketing, probably this gives me an idea that I can then identify a series of skills that I can build on that would make me a better match as a candidate for these roles in the future. Right, so the skills mismatch is an opportunity to gain new skills through the experiences that you have, or to seek out those skills. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. Now, obviously, if I'm applying to be a statistician and I have no interest in statistics and I can't do statistics, there are some non-starting careers that are out there. But in general terms, you're looking for where these job families line up nicely with your skill sets. You could do lots of these roles, right? With a background in political science, you could go into many of these career fields and utilize your skills and knowledge areas effectively, but you don't actually want to do all of those things. And the difference between could and want is important, right? Just because you have the skills and knowledge doesn't mean that you would enjoy working in that industry, working for, aligning your efforts with the mission of the organizations. They may have a financial mission or a political mission that you don't share, right? So you wouldn't want to work for those types of organizations. Again, within an industry, there's going to be a whole continuum of different organizations that are out there, of which you could find ones that do align and not. But even though those broad job families, there are going to be some that are going to be a better match than others. And so part of career exploration is narrowing down all those options to the ones that you're most excited by and most interested in. So it's taking these sort of nebulous jobs that you could do and then creating a plan that's much more of a, here's my priority role, but here are 3 other roles that I've come across that I'm really excited by, that I have a good match for, that I've done some research into, that I could use and position myself for those roles if I wanted to, or if I needed to, right? If I need a different role because the role I want didn't work out, or I chose not to do that, then knowing that you have options is going to be very reassuring as part of this process. So the taking things from the could to the want is a twofold process: research and networking. So we're going to cover a couple of different tools available to you to help you do this to a certain extent. Now, the online research is not hard to imagine how this is important, but let's take a sort of a perspective about ways to do this. One way to do this is to actually look at where people like you have gone. People with a political science background, with a PhD in political science, where have they gone before? And as I said at the beginning, we do, through our office, collect data on first destination outcomes, career destination outcomes for graduating students. We do that from undergraduates all the way through the PhD. This is not a required survey, and so we don't always get 100% responses, but the responses that we do have are all shared on our website. And you can look through the arts and sciences one, you can find political science for the last 5 or 6 years here, and see where people in your program have gone on to next. And I was taking a look through, the last couple of years, and you'll find that many of them are in postdoc positions, many of them in faculty positions, and that's not surprising, and maybe that's reassuring at the same time. But it also gives you some insight into where the people have taken different paths are going into. Now, the fact that these people have taken different paths means that this now becomes more of a well-traveled route, right? People with your skills have been successful along that path, and so it's going to be easier for you to identify, to a certain extent, why your skills and knowledge areas might be a good fit for that role. So there are a couple of consultants as well over the last few years who've taken their PhD and applied that in think tank and consulting type roles as well. So that's, again, reassuring to know that there are paths out there that are more well-trodden. You're not having to establish the first path that's out there. LinkedIn is a great resource to sort of explore this as well, right? So on LinkedIn, there's a sort of a alumni tool. It doesn't really have a name, but it's an alumni tool. If you go to the University of Pennsylvania page, click on the alumni tab, this link here will take you straight to that. This link is in that link that I put in the chat as well. You can explore the, I think I was looking yesterday, it's 185,000 alumni and current students who went to Penn at all degree levels, undergraduate, masters, PhDs, a few postdocs, a few certificate people, all sort of a good mix of it. But you can explore this based on these parameters here, right? Where they live geographically, where they work. So a lot of Google, Amazon, and Facebook right now. The role that they play in their work. So research and education, that could be faculty, but there are other roles out there as well. And then what they studied, right? And these are all filterable searches that you can use to sort of slice and dice through the alumni and figure out what's going on. So if we take this, 175,000, I do a sub search for political science and government, right? That's what they studied. It's not a direct match to, program names at Penn, because this is LinkedIn, it's broader than just one institution, but this is close enough, right? So there's 10,000 alumni who say that they study political science and government. And of course, the vast majority will be undergraduates through the program. Some of them will be people who studied something at Penn and went on to get a PhD in political science somewhere else and are still captured here. But that's fine for the purposes of what we might use this for in terms of career explorations. So under that 10,000, I scrolled through some of the profiles there, and I pulled out a few that when I delve deeper, they all have PhDs in different ways. And that includes Meredith here at the University of Pennsylvania, leading the Graduate Student Center with a PhD in political science. But this is just an example, right? I spent 5 minutes scrolling through to see people's profiles. I saw, when they graduated, I saw the program that they're in. I confirmed that they had PhDs. I think Jeff has a PhD from another institution, but isn't a Penn undergrad, for example. Each of them has a perspective of a career path that they've taken, consulting, research, think tanks, and academic administration. They have a piece of the puzzle that you may not yet have about what it's like to work in these fields, what skills that they bring from their PhD that help make them be successful in their role, how this path maybe surprised them in terms of how it was a good fit for their experience, what they wish they had known during their PhD about this career path that might have been helpful to position themselves for it moving forward. Because these people share a connection with you, they're all Penn alumni, they're all great connections that you could potentially make and find out more about these things. But right now, you could just pull the job title, you could pull the organization, and put that into a sort of a database of, here are places that have hired PhDs in political science, and you don't have to restrict yourself to political science, of course. But that's a great starting way of exploring, right? So extracting the data from this, sticking it into an Excel spreadsheet based on employer, based on position title, based on the skills that you're seeing these people talk about, that's a great way of beginning this process of exploration. Another great way of doing sort of exploration is actually to jump into a jobs board, not necessarily because you're applying for jobs, because that may be too soon in the process, but just to see who's interested in someone with a political science background. And I think political science is a great keyword because it's a very, it's a very specific term. Obviously, there's politics and there's other elements to do with that, but political science as a keyword often pops up quite a lot in job searches. And so you can get a sense of what people may be interested in out there and what skills they're seeking, but also just in general terms, which organizations value the type of expertise and knowledge and skills that you bring to a particular role. So I went out there and into LinkedIn, into the jobs board, and I put political science as the keyword because I wasn't feeling very imaginative. And a whole bunch of stuff came up. It looks like this Facebook meta concept is really investing into research perspectives right now. But I took a couple of jobs as examples, right? So this is an academic collaborator, social impact research at Meta, which again, I think they're still trying to figure out exactly what Facebook is and what Meta is, but that's who they are. Right away in the minimum qualifications, we can see here that a PhD in social science, including all these fields that overlap with yours and political science, is something that they are interested in. Experience with applied statistics and data and survey design is what they're interested in. These are things that probably align with your expertise. And then the responsibilities, right? You can look through that and try to get a sense of what are people doing with the skills that I have? What does it look like in these different types of settings? Meta, sort of a tech company, I don't know how they describe themselves right now. But this is what they're interested in, right? They're interested in people who can do research and who can translate that research to different audiences, all of which may be exciting and interesting to you. Now, the next step to this is not necessarily to apply, but to find ways to learn more about these types of opportunities, to find people who may have experience working at Facebook or similar types of tech companies or social media companies, depending on what this is all about, and really understanding what that looks like, right? That's a great target next step that might come from looking at a job description like this. A research scientist at AI Futures, a research and deployment company dedicated to ensuring that general purpose AI benefits all of humanity. So again, an interesting policy tech hybrid of an organization here. If we jump down to the candidates, they're looking for people with graduate degrees in economics, history, or political science. So again, they're not requiring that you have a political science background, but they value the skills and experiences and perspectives that someone with a political science background has, right? And that's to your advantage. They're basically saying, we're very interested in what you can bring to the role. Interestingly about this role, again, what they're asking for here is the ideal candidate will be self-directed, which is all PhDs, will enjoy asking foundational research questions, pretty much all PhDs, challenging existing frameworks for thinking about AI. That may not be exactly your area, but close enough to that. We're particularly looking for candidates who are open to pursuing unusually exploratory and open-ended research, right? And so if you define yourself as someone who's doing that type of thing, then they're giving you an opportunity to sort of really highlight the value that you bring in this type of role. So, paying attention to the job ads and trying to read into them is going to be helpful as part of the exploration process. Here's one more, Education Program Manager, Racial Equity and Justice Initiative at Apple, looking for a community education program manager for our growing environmental policy and social initiatives team, help to shape objectives, advance strategic partnerships, with a specific focus on historically Black colleges, universities, and organizations serving Black and Brown communities. So in this case, the education is a bachelor's or a master's degree, multicultural studies, political science, education. So a graduate level degree, political science, one of the flavors that they've identified, knowledge of the academic environment, knowledge of some of these social issues related to this. These are all things that you've pulled and picked up along the way through your own experiences as a PhD student that could be leveraged here. And again, the political science isn't the key to getting this job, but it certainly gets you, through some of the doors as part of this process. Other areas to do research. So our Career Services subscribes to a tool called Vault, which I think was just rebranded as Firsthand, so you'll see it in different ways. But some of the tools on our website are these industry guides that you can take a look at, right? So in the bottom two corners, the bottom right-hand corners here, social science jobs, political politics, public policy, and activism jobs. These may be of particular interest to you. But again, this gives you a nice overview of some of the resources and tools that are out there that you might be able to, some of the opportunities out there that you might be able to explore that you may not have known about, some of the different trajectories within these fields, some of the main players, the big organizations that do things. All of this is easy reading. It's not stuff that takes a lot of time, but is really great at giving you some perspectives about what you can learn and how you can leverage that as part of your exploration. Another big tool that we really love PhDs to spend some time with is our Aurora platform. So again, Aurora is another PhD-specific platform, not specific to the humanities and social sciences this time, encompassing all disciplines for people with PhDs, but it's custom-made to help support your professional and career development. And there are lots of different elements to this. They have online tools, workbooks that you can work through, videos, lots of reflection opportunities as part of this process. One of the things that I think that they have, which is a really great way of sort of doing some research, is the Career Exploration video library, right? So they've done lots of interviews with PhDs in different fields, and you can sort through that by skills, by discipline areas to find and sit in on some of these conversations. These conversations are very much like informational interviews, which are sort of networking opportunities where you speak with people in roles that you are excited by to learn more about those roles. But this is sort of even easier than that because you don't even have to initiate those conversations, you just sit in on that. So, one of the skills that I searched for is research and analysis. You can see here a couple of political science PhDs popped up in the videos there. What I think is great about these videos is that they're not specific to job titles, right? Because I think people know what job titles always mean for different roles, but they're specific to skills. If you're interested in using these types of skills, you can sort of find people who have leveraged their skills in roles that are not faculty roles, but that are part of that expanded set of opportunities that PhDs can leverage. So these are really great tools to sort of jump into and explore as part of your exploration. I talked about the workbooks as part of Aurora, right? These are a couple of workbooks that you can work through that integrate and pull in from the platform, the different tools and resources there, but help you do it in a strategic, thoughtful way, right? So really taking advantage of the step-by-step processes that they put into place so that you can be guided as part of your exploration, I think is important. Doing this as part of a peer group, a small group, you and a buddy, you and a group, I think that makes it much easier because you can all share your own experiences and your own networks as part of that process. So do take every opportunity to leverage the Aurora platform. The Versatile PhD, again, another platform specifically designed for PhDs, like the name suggests. This does look for opportunities that are beyond the faculty one. Aurora actually has resources about positioning yourself successfully for faculty roles. So make sure you take advantage of those ones as well, because there are workshops and putting together cover letters and teaching statements and diversity statements, all the things that you're working on if you're applying for the faculty roles. That's all embedded in Aurora as well. The Versatile PhD, again, is much more about the professional options that are out there. One of the things, this is not my scientist, one of the things that they have is this PhD career finder tool, which very much like the Imagine PhD sort of job families, breaks down the common paths taken by people with PhDs in humanities and social sciences, as well as the STEM side as well. So you can see some of these paths here. They very much match the ones that Imagine PhD had. But you can explore these and get sort of baseline information about these different paths that are out there. So if we take policy as a general career field, what you'll find is actual resumes that PhDs have put together and the job description and the cover letter that they use for these particular types of positions, right? So those are sort of great, probably not early on stage things that you need to take a look at, but having sample resumes of people who've been successful in different roles out there is great. And again, another couple of political scientists here, just as examples. They have a Q&A, which is a past events on think tanks and policy analysis, again, roles that are going to be very strongly associated with the work that you're doing, but that you may not have a lot of familiarity with. You can gain some baseline information by participating and by reviewing some of the resources on the Versatile PhD. So do take advantage of that as a resource as well. Embedded within the Versatile PhD is this webinar sort of series on talking about what I'm talking about right now, exploring your options, self-assessing, creating networks, right? So these are self-guided videos that you can leverage to really make sure that you're well-positioned and on the right track for what you're doing. So again, since we want to make sure that you have access 24/7 when you need it to these resources through our office, through our advising, through tools like this, these are all great to add together. Engaging with careers, whether faculty careers or careers beyond the faculty sphere, there's many steps to that process. The online research that I've been talking about is just one example of steps that you can be taking, but it's critical, right? You can't network effectively, you can't apply unless you've done some of this background research. But there are many more sort of ways that you can connect with career options that are out there. The next one I'm going to be talking about is really engaging in that networking aspect of it. We'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. But there are even options to sort of get some practice. There's a site called Intersect Job Simulations, free to use, where the coordinators of this platform brought together opportunities that people with PhDs in different fields, the types of things that they do in their role, right? They've taken a small task, one of the projects that people work on in a role, in an industry, and they've made it into an exercise that you can do on your own pace to give an example of what that looks like. So for example, here are sort of 4 sections of sort of 4 different industries, of which there are these job simulations that you can go through and sort of say, well, what does that look like? What do you have to do if you're doing user experience research, right? And this will walk you through an example of what that looks like, just to see if it resonates with you. Is it something that excited you? Is it something that really bored you? Is it something you want to do again? Again, that's sort of going to give you some experience understanding what that looks like. Under policy and advocacy and research and analysis, again, these are different elements that you can explore with these job sims. So again, I wouldn't do that with everything, right? Once you've figured out that there are some paths of interest to you, you might look to see if there are job simulations that are connected with that. So then the networking part, I think, is going to be critical. The best use of your time as a PhD student is not tinkering with your CV or resume for the 100th time. It's really getting out there and having some good conversations with people who have information that you don't yet have, information about the decisions that they made, why they made those decisions, the field that they're in, what's valued in their field. You know, those are things that you won't get from online research alone, but you can get from connecting with your network in that way. So you and your graduate program, you know, open up the door to these opportunities that are out there, but you won't have all the answers, right? You will have questions. And once you figured out what those questions are, then networking becomes much more effective, because your goal in networking is not just to meet people, which, you know, sounds terrifying to me in most cases as someone with introverted tendencies, but it's about answering questions that you have. And that becomes much more manageable as part of that process. So the process of connecting with people, once you have questions, it gives you so many benefits, right? One of the benefits is to hear how people describe what they do, and to be very active in your listening to that. If you have, you know, any experience doing ethnographic research, embedding yourself into the culture of the organization that that this person comes from, and taking advantage of what they're telling you about their language, or what they're telling you about their projects and the language that they use to describe those projects. That's going to be really helpful to you if you eventually pursue opportunities in that path, because your goal will be to describe your experience in the language that you're hearing other people use about their experience, right? So if you can sort of adapt your narrative to integrate language from the different fields that are of interest to you, you're going to position yourself much more effectively for those roles moving forward. If you keep trying to use the same academic language to say that you can do lots of things, you might find less success out there. So being an active listener is great. Knowing what skills are valued in these experiences are great. So this is a direct question that you can ask someone through a network engagement. What are the skills that you use in your role to be successful? Right? If they are leveraging academic skills, then great, because that will be easy for you to do too. If they are leveraging skills that you haven't yet had or haven't practiced that much, then that's an opportunity for you to ask, to sort of figure out, where can I gain experiences that are going to give me those skill sets as well. Having good conversations with people also builds strong relationships with professionals in fields that may interest you, right? And that's going to be very helpful when you do apply, to have someone who's able to advocate for you, because you've connected with them and engaged with them and had a good, conversation with them. They know you're proactive, and they know you ask smart questions, and they know you're interested, right? These are all things that are great. Even being able to name drop in the last paragraph of the cover letter, having chatted with one of your senior researchers about your projects, makes me even more excited about applying to this organization. So that's a great way of sort of building support systems for you in different fields that you don't have a lot of access to right now through your networking. And then obviously it helps you make the right choices. If you find people out there who enjoy what they do and value what they do and are valued for what they do, and those are people who see the world like you and experience the world like you and share an academic background like you, then you can feel more confident that probably that you too will enjoy that role, even if you've never done it before, never had an internship, never had a project sort of engagement with them before. That's going to give you a lot more confidence. Informational interviewing, I talked about it up front, about this process. We have an informational interviewing guide on our website. It's in one of the links that I shared in the chat, so you can take a look at that. It walks you through the stages, how to start conversations, some of the questions you can ask. It can be a very informal process, but it's one of the best uses of your time, especially as you're exploring options that are out there. And I sort of touched on some of these benefits earlier on in terms of what it is that you're trying to do. And again, this type of informational interviewing is fantastic for faculty jobs as well as jobs that are unrelated to faculty roles, right? So chatting with people in different types of institutions and different types of departments, asking them about how they are positioning themselves for success, asking them about what they wish they had gained more skills, what skills do they wish they had built more as part of their student experience can be great. And it's easy to find alumni who are faculty, and easy to find an email for those faculty because it's always on their websites. So a great opportunity to find people in their first 1 to 4 years of their position and really get an insight about what different schools are like, what different different research-intensive teaching, state, big, small, private, liberal arts, many different dimensions of faculty roles that you can do, as well as exploring options beyond those faculty roles. It's also, as part of networking, a great opportunity for you to practice your own narratives, right? When you're networking with someone, you have to talk about your research and what you're doing, but you have to make it meaningful to the people that you're talking to. So you have to practice different versions of yourself, practice talking about what you do well and what you've succeeded in doing without anyone criticizing it, which is, I think, a wonderful thing to do. No one in networking is going to give you critical feedback about your research. You get to talk about it in excited and optimistic ways. Let's think about different ways of exploring sort of organizations out there networking, through LinkedIn, which is one of the main tools for LinkedIn, right? So I touched on a couple of those meta jobs before, which is similar to Facebook, or is say Facebook? I haven't quite figured that out yet. But I first went to Facebook here and I did a search for under what they studied, political science and government. And I found 500 employees who work at Facebook who said that their background is in political science, not from Penn only, some are, but not all of them. Then I figured out that Meta was perhaps the way Facebook is going, because there are more people at Meta than there are at Facebook. So I did the same thing. So 2,500 or so, 2,200 people at Meta who have a political science background. 36 of those are Penn alumni, right? So that's if you were interested in working at this organization, that's a nice pool to begin to sort of start with. Again, not all have PhDs, but that doesn't really matter because they each have a piece of the puzzle about the organization that you don't yet have. Here's who are some of those 36 people are, right? So I just did I scrolled down on the page and it reveals that there's a researcher, there's a UX researcher, there's strategic response policy. I have no idea what that is, but it's exciting to explore, product marketing, and so forth. What I'm looking for here as well are my connections, right? So Ashley, I don't know, secondary connection, but I know 2 people in common with Ashley. And so if I were to look at Ashley's profile and want to start a conversation with Ashley, I could go to my connections on LinkedIn and say, hey, I see that you know Ashley, right? This is someone I'd love to start a conversation with. Can you help me start a conversation? Or at least could I use your name when I'm reaching out? Hi, Ashley, we both know X. X said you'd be a great person to chat with. That's a great way of getting, some of these conversations started. So let's take a look at, there you go, Ashley from your program. Let's take a look at Mike. I was the first one on the list, so I clicked on Mike. Social science researcher with extensive experience in quantitative research, diverse research backgrounds, think tanks, academia, the Federal Reserve, experience presenting research to different people, proficient in all these skills. Now, Mike is like a gold mine of information because Mike has traversed many industries and so has this viewpoint that you probably don't have in terms of seeing all these different paths out there and being able to compare his experience across those. Let's take a look at Mike's experience. So he's a bachelor's from Penn, went on to do a political science PhD at UCSD, but has worked as a research assistant, has worked as a senior analyst, as an adjunct professor, is working as a researcher right now. So lots of different experiences here. Now, if you're able to start a conversation with Mike and say, Mike, I'd love to hear about some of your experiences in these different areas, what you liked about it, why you made some of the decisions, you can gain so much information that requires that you don't have to take the same steps, right? You're sort of shortcutting the process by leveraging what Mike's experience might be. Now, Mike is a totally different person, sees the world differently, is a different person. So it's not a direct match to how you would experience the world, but it's certainly, very useful as part of your process. Now, Mike wasn't a third degree connection, I think, for me, so I don't have a contact in common, but there are tools that I could share and talk about in terms of how to find emails for people easily. You could try it through the MyPenn system, which is the Penn alumni database of alums that is Penn specific. You might find Mike has a profile there, but there are also other ways around that as well. You also may have different connections and might find that you are connected with Mike differently because you have more people that you may know in the fields that Mike is also connected with. So a wonderful way to explore options that are out there through the people who've already lived some of those experiences and get some of your questions answered. I'd love to hear about what it's like to work in a think tank, to work in X role, to work in your current role, right? So, and making sure that you're asking questions that are relevant to Mike's experience and makes it interesting for Mike, right? If you say to Mike, can you tell me what I should do for my next step? Mike cannot answer that question. But if you tell him, ask about his own experiences, then he certainly can. So this whole process of exploration then takes all of these career paths and begins to narrow it down to ones that are going to be a great fit for you that you can then go to and apply for and go through those next stages in the process. So that's, I want to give you this overview just to give you an idea about all the steps that can be taken that are out there. Now, going back to Aurora, right, they have all of these workbooks and resources that you can leverage. And I pulled together all their different courses that they have on exploring options with a PhD. And I have flagged a couple of here, using LinkedIn to research career options and how to build and grow your network, because that's what we've been touching on very briefly here. But all of these are steps that you can go through that are accompanied by the workbooks and the exercises that you can do as part of that. So do take advantage of those if that's something that's interesting to you. On Imagine PhD again, beyond the job families that we talked about, for each of these job families, rather, they have 4 bits of information that go along with that, right? They explore, connect, apply, and build skills, give you better insight into what's going on. The explore to sort of look at resources that are available to you. The connect helps you identify groups that you may be able to connect with, professional groups, scholarly groups that might give you insight into these different roles. The apply actually has sample job descriptions and sample resumes and cover letters so that you can see how people have created good connections between who they are and their academic background and these new positions that are out there that require changing the narrative about your skill sets and how to apply that.